Hey everybody, so I'm bringing you a little quick look at the 1.71 dev server, all the vehicles that I could tell that there were. I'm going to start and go left to right with the US through to Italy, beginning with tanks, and then I'll do air for each nation. And if you didn't know, you can, all the recoilless rifles on the M50 Ontos are bound to the same fire key. So you can rapid fire all 6 of your shots, and then it reloads all of them all at once. So that's something else. You can't fire one shot and then reload something else. It's just fire all 6 till they're empty, then you reload, and you get 2 reloads of it, and that's it. So also there's 2 crew members. So real quick, none of this is going to be gameplay. It's all going to be test drives and test flights. And in fact, for the test flights, I didn't even take the aircraft airborne. Those are the short, just looks at what they look like, and you can hear the engines idling. None of my controls were set up for the dev server, and I didn't know how much time I actually had in the dev server. By the time I got the dev server installed and updated, it took a long time. The gun raise, by the way, on the M50 Ontos is very slow, so that'll be something to watch out for. Hopefully it'll improve with modifications, but stock, it's pretty slow. Here are all the modifications for it. I'll have a screenshot of the modifications at the end of each tank as well. Second, we move on to the M60A1 Rise with the explosive reactive armor panels. The stock ammo is the same old APDS that we're used to. That's not entirely great. It's certainly not going to do well against this angle on a mouse armor, so I don't waste too many shots on it, and then we moved on to something else. For most of the tanks, it should be... I'll take some shots at the mouse, I'll shoot at the other tanks, try to give you like a 360 look around at the tank, and then also do some driving to see what the acceleration and speed is like, which in the M60A1 is no different than any other of the M60 tanks. Slow acceleration and slow maximum speed, unfortunately. It does have a pretty good stabilizer, although ignore that shot there because all of the test drives, all these tanks are stock configuration, so the gun alignment is really bad. And a lot of the shots go off and crazy at not where you're aiming, but it's relatively accurate actually for the M60A1. Those last couple shots notwithstanding, it seemed to be fairly accurate on the move. So stabilizer seems to be pretty good for it. I look forward to seeing how the explosive reactive armor works. There's not really any way to test it in the dev server. I didn't have real time to go after a lot of gameplay, so you should be able to see gameplay from other War Thunder YouTubers if you need to see it. I apologize for not having gameplay for things like the explosive reactive armor. It's kind of tough to see one of the main features of the M60A1 if nothing's shooting at me. But my kind of intent here was just to get a quick look at all these tanks, see how they accelerate, see what the gun is like, kind of see what the reload is like. They're all stock configuration, including, I think, the premiums, and I'll explain what I mean when we get to the M47 for Germany. Anyway, finishing up, there's a little look around at the armor panels and stuff on the M60A1. I think it's pretty good looking. I'm looking forward to getting it. But it's not my most anticipated tank for America. No, no, no. Here are the modifications. You can see one extra thing it gets over the basic M60A1 is APFSDS, and that's nice. This is the tank I'm looking forward to getting the most for America. I didn't get a pen on that angle because I hit almost perfectly on the edge of the turret. But other than that, 152mm APFSDS is probably going to go through almost anything. And if you can hit a mouse at that angle and penetrate through, you're going to do alright. I love the reload sound too, because it actually sounds like an ammo belt rather than like a single shell. I thought that was funny. I did like the 360 swing around view here, because this is the most modern looking tank of America, in that the turret very much so resembles the M1 Abrams, the M1A1, and the M1A2. Including the engine deck looks very similar too. Very good stabilizer, it's got really good acceleration, and the APFSDS stock round is going to do a lot of damage to things. Like that. Acceleration seems really good, and the nice thing about that is the KPZ-70, the German version of this, has a better engine, so I didn't notice any real perceptible difference in the acceleration and speed between the two of them, but they both go pretty quickly from the get-go, so that's nice. yeah, I really am looking forward to the MBT-70 and the KPZ-70 for sure. Especially once you get the gun alignment modification done. I think they'll be really dangerous. Plus they get ATGMs eventually, so that's also nice. The other nice thing about it, which we'll see here in a moment, is there's a coax machine gun on each one of them, and there's also a 20mm cannon on top. That gun there to the left, that's a 20mm cannon. There's also a coax machine gun alongside the main 152 gun, but yeah, 20mm cannon to shoot down aircraft. That's going to make both of these tanks very formidable at anti-aircraft, or at least at self-defense against anti-aircraft. They're not going to be anti-aircraft tanks by any means, but they're going to be pretty good at their own self-defense. So there you can see the modifications for that. Next up, we've got the T-114. This is a premium, the only premium tank so far for America in Update 1.71. It's only got 2 people in the crew again, so watch out for that. And the recoilless rifle it's got is actually pretty funny. It's got this little heat grenade thing that's almost like an RPG practically. And they come in 3-round canisters, basically 3-round, I don't know, cartridges if you want to call it, and then you get to reload. Now the really nice thing about this that I noticed is, watch here, I'm going to switch back and forth between the ammo, and look at the ballistics are very, very similar. There's almost no change in the ballistic drop between the 2 different ammo types. So that's really nice. You'll be able to fire your ammo, hit somebody, and then if your ammo doesn't work and the other ammo is a better option, you can switch and just about probably be able to fire, unless you're shooting at extremely long ranges, you'll be able to just keep your aim point and fire again, and I think that's great. Now, you gotta... I don't think you can change your ammo in the middle of the 3-round cartridge, so you'd have to fire off whatever ammo you have left out of the 3 rounds, but once you did that, you could at least switch over to whatever ammo is going to work better. So that's nice for this thing. I don't think it's terribly fast, and that was one of the things that they said in the dev blog was, don't rely on your armor, you're going to have to use your speed, and I don't consider this to be fast, so I'm not sure how much your speed is going to get you out of trouble. It is a very low-profile tank, so that will be definitely helpful. That'll be a good thing, and I think it's got pretty good gun depression, although I actually forgot to test the gun depression on this one. I did test the gun depression on most other tanks. But it doesn't have a stabilizer either, so that's something you're going to want to watch out for. That's a little bit tough in a Tier 5 premium, not having a stabilizer, but I think its ammo and 3-round autoloader will probably make up for a lot of that. I would say this seems like an interesting vehicle to have. I don't know if I'm going to get it necessarily. I've got a lot of talismans on Tier 5 American tanks, but this is a very interesting vehicle to me. It reminds me of a railgun or laser tank from some futuristic type tank games, or like real-time strategy type games, like world-building games where you get past the future, and that's sort of what the tanks are looking like. So here we have the first aircraft, the A-26B-10. Looks very similar to the other A-26 in the regular tree, so I'm not exactly sure what the difference is. I apologize, I didn't take the time to look up and read up on them. I just wanted to get video roll of them as fast as possible. So the modifications look really similar to the other one. And next we've got the P-51HNA. It's got better engine power as far as I know, and it's very similar as far as what I've heard to the rest of the P-51Ds. I don't actually know. It's got the same 650 cals, I know that. I apologize for not getting aerial shots of these guys in action or takeoff or anything. My controls weren't set up for the dev server, and I just had to hurry and get look-arounds of these. This is the F4U4 with 650 cal machine guns. They're M2s, not M3s. So that kind of stinks, but should be a very formidable fighter. Should be a pretty good ground striker once you get the modifications for it, too. Here's the F4U4B, which is essentially the same aircraft, but with 4 cannons instead of 4 20mm cannons instead of 650 cal machine guns. And as I was saying, the reason I didn't get these guys airborne is my controls weren't set up for the dev server, and I just wanted to get video of them as quickly as possible, rather than mess around with controls and possibly miss out on getting video on something while I was setting up air controls. I didn't have any idea how long the dev server was actually going to be up, so I just went straight into recording. There's all the modifications. This will also be a very good ground striker eventually. Very good fighter, too. And here is the American premium aircraft, the XA-38 Grizzly, with the 75mm cannon in the nose and a couple of machine guns down below in the chin. Should also be a very interesting ground striker. It gets some bomb loadout and has a tail gunner. Should be pretty neat, I think. I don't know that I'll get it, necessarily personally, but I think a lot of people will, and I think they're going to like it, especially if you're good with the cannons and ground strike. Alright, so moving on to Germany, we start with the Waffentrager, whatever, the waffle tray. If my German is terrible, then sorry. I'm just going to probably call it the waffle tray pretty much always. It's the same long 88 as we've seen on most high-tier German heavies, so as usual, it does not go through the side of the IS-4's turret. It does, however, go through the side of the IS-4's engine deck. And somebody actually came and knocked on my door while I was recording here, so I stopped the recording quick, but then I noticed the IS-4 was blown up, so I just picked the recording up after it was destroyed. So sorry, we missed the destruction of the IS-4, but we get to test the driving on the waffle tray. It doesn't have a stabilizer, so watch out for that. It's also got an open top turret, and it's not terribly fast. I think this thing is going to die a lot to airstrikes. It's got a very good gun, and look at that gun depression. The gun depression is very good, with a very good gun, so if you can hide behind terrain or a hill or vehicle wreckage or something, this is going to do a lot of good for you. I think it would be really useful in the PvE Arcade Assault event for the daily boosters. If you use it for that, I think you could really do well with it. It's not the best thing for that, though. We'll come to that later. But one of the slight benefits to it not being very fast is it's a bit easier to fire on the move, although I would not really recommend firing on the move with this thing too much. However, if you can get hull down, like behind this little bit of a hill here, this is probably going to be the best use for it. Probably defensively, with the hull down, and get yourself as low as possible, this is probably going to be where this thing excels, I think. Does shoot nice and flat with the long 88, so it's got a big benefit there. If you can catch people on the side, you're going to do really well with this. It's just not very fast. And open top, but... Next we come to the KPZ-70, the German version of the MBT-70. And again, I love this thing. Boom. APF SDS through the side of an IS-4 from 800 meters. I'll take it. Also, like I said, the acceleration and engine are very, very similar to the American MBT-70. The engine on this is a little bit better, so it should have a little bit better acceleration and maybe better top speed. I'm not sure. I'm watching right now to see... Yeah, it hit 29. The American only got up to 28 miles an hour, I believe, and this one's hitting at least 29, so... Again, the turret turns very quickly on this. The turret rotation is very good in a stock configuration. The stock APF SDS round is also very good, and it gets much better rounds down the line with modifications. So, combined with the stabilizer and the Mk.III and the 20mm cannon, this is going to be an excellent vehicle. I'm at the point now where I don't know that I'm going to buy the RU-251 anymore. I meant to get it in November during the anniversary sale, but I may just get the KPZ-70 instead and put that in what my German light tank slot was going to be instead of the RU-251. I don't know. We'll see how it performs and how it does against actual enemy tanks, but I really like the look of it so far in the test drive. I will try to get some gameplay for some of these tanks if I have the opportunity here in the next few days, but I don't know for sure if I'm going to be able to do that. If I get the opportunity, I will do so. And that 20 mil cannon combined with the MG3's rapid fire machine guns is going to do really well in self-defense against aircraft. Looking forward to that. And yeah, 152mm APF SDS is just monstrous, and the reload is pretty darn good too, so very exciting. Also, I really like the German camouflage on this and the German M47. There's all the modifications. And speaking of the German M47, the mKPz M47, which is Germany's premium tank for this update. For some reason, you can't access all the ammunition in the test drive, so I couldn't use the Heat FS shells here, or I would have. So we're stuck on the stock ammo, the stock AP round, which is not great against most of its probable adversaries in high tier. It'd be good against some of the American tanks, but it's not going to do you any favors against Soviet tanks. However, since it's a premium, you should just about never use the stock AP round. And look at that camo. I love the camo on this M47 as well. Other than that, it's basically the same old M47 that we know and some people love, some people don't love in the American tree. It moves pretty well. It's pretty fast, relatively speaking. The gun is good against lesser armored things with the AP round, but for the most part, if you're going to buy this thing, you might as well use the Heat FS round and pretty much nothing else, because you're going to be making enough money with the premium tank to pay for the premium rounds. I know that's a old tanks thing, not a Warthog thing, but essentially that's what Heat FS is with this. You're paying to get the Heat FS right away. I don't know that I'm going to personally get this, just because I have enough talismans on Leopards and the Maus and other higher tier German tanks that I don't think I probably will get the premium German M47. If anything, I'll get the KPZ-70 and put a talisman on that and use that for grinding anything else I've got, although I won't have that much else to grind at high tier Germans. And as you can see, the stock AP round, just 90mm stock AP rounds are just kind of crap in the game, but I guess they're not as bad as APCR. It also does not have a stabilizer, which is going to be a little rough for a premium at Tier 5 and Tier 6. But there you have all the upgrades that you can get, same as the American M47, which brings us to the Soviets. And the BTR-152A with, what are they, KPVT 14.5mm machine guns, a pair of them. You get a lot of ammo with this, but it's only 50 rounds per gun at a time, so you do run out rather quickly. And I know I'm going to not actually kill the target aircraft here, which is kind of silly with a anti-aircraft tank, or self-propelled anti-aircraft half-track, whatever. But if you look here, you can do a lot of damage with the 14.5mm machine guns, even with the default ammo, against lightly armored vehicles, which you will probably encounter quite a few of. I would expect this thing to get hull broken a lot, but you can actually do a lot of anti-tank damage with this thing. I know, shocking, it's a Soviet SBAA, why wouldn't it be a great anti-tank vehicle too? You're not going to do a lot of damage against a Maus, however, except maybe to annoy it, if it even notices you at all. It may just think that it drove through all those boxes of beehives on this map and just stirred up some bees from all your 14.5s hitting it, but I imagine the ammunition upgrades will really help this do a lot of extremely fast damage to enemy aircraft. Stock belts don't seem to do a whole lot. I may be just hitting them with the solid shots from the stock belts here, but I got like 3 or 4 hits on that BF-110 throughout this little test drive here, and I didn't set them on damage or do any critical damage or anything, so it's possible I just hit them with all the wrong rounds, but I think the stock belts probably aren't terribly good for anti-aircraft with this. When you see the modification screen, you'll see that there are some really good-looking anti-aircraft and, honestly, anti-tank and anti-light armored vehicle belts coming up in modifications. The turret rotation doesn't seem excessively fast for an anti-aircraft vehicle, but it doesn't seem terrible either. So, I would expect to lose the gunner pretty quickly here to any sort of fire, including machine guns, as he is somewhat exposed. But yeah, I know, I didn't actually shoot down the one aircraft that's available to shoot down with my anti-aircraft vehicle here, but you get the idea. It should be a pretty good anti-aircraft. Anyway, now here is what I think will be excellent for use against the Arcade Assault PvE event map every single day for the boosters, and I'll show you what I mean at the end of this. This is the Su-100P, which comes down near the bottom of the Soviet tank destroyer tree, and it's pretty good. You're not going to really do much against a mouse from that angle with the stock 100mm shell, but you can easily destroy just about everything else at pretty good distances. And the reload's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not that bad. That's not too bad for a reload, especially once you get used to the ballistic trajectory of the rounds for this thing. You won't actually need to worry about the reload either, because most of the things that you hit, you're probably going to do significant damage, if not fatal damage to. Now, I grant you that I'm firing at all these tanks from the side and not the fronts, but if you can fire at something from a distance where you're going to hurt it, you're going to hurt it badly enough that your reload really isn't going to matter if you miss. Well, because you won't miss. If you miss, that could be an issue. But once you get the ballistics down, you're used to the trajectories on these things. Like, for instance, not taking 3 shots like it did here against the Jagdtiger, but again, once you actually hit your target from the side here, you're going to wipe it out. So, not bad. It's got pretty decent mobility as well, and what I was really impressed with, and you'll see in a minute here, is the arc of traverse that the gun has. It's not a proper turret, it doesn't go 360 degrees, but the amount of traverse this thing has is really impressive. Now, the gun shield is not going to save you from a lot, probably just light machine guns. But the nice thing about this would be, if you get disabled in it, and you're pointed anywhere near your target, disabled as in mobility disabled, if you lose your tracks or your engine or your driver, you've got an extreme amount of gun traverse that you could cover an awful lot of the frontal arc of your Su-100P, and you're still going to be really combat effective. It doesn't traverse quickly, that's the big negative to it, but the amount of traverse it has and the amount of terrain that you could cover with the gun on this thing is really impressive. So you'll see here, I'll fully traverse it to the right, then we'll swing back over and fully traverse it all the way back over to the left, and you'll see 2 things: how far it can go, and how long it takes to go from one to the other. But look at that, it's nearly 90 degrees off to either side. It's an extremely good traverse. It's just not an extremely fast traverse. It's an extremely good arc, not an extremely good traverse is what I should say. Now, it should be improved once you get the gun traverse, the horizontal traverse modification, of course, so that will help. But even in a stock configuration, you'll most likely want to be moving the tank itself as well as the gun and kind of sling the gun over. But the amount of arc that you get is really impressive on this. And there are the modifications. You, of course, get the BR-412D shell, which is the best 100mm shell that you can get for a Soviet 100. Next, we move on to the BMP-1, one of the first armored personnel IFV type vehicles we get. And this one's got some funny little ammo. Look at how slow the velocity is on this second round here. Hilarious. You're not going to want to be firing that thing too far. Now, the ATGMs here are first generation, so you've got to steer with your tank driving keys to move them. And the reload is not very fast on it. However, you can fire the main gun while you're waiting for reload. I didn't do it here in the test drive, but it's a totally different button, so you would actually be able to. Now, watch the reload here. Once that little door closes, then you have to wait for the fins to come out, then it can fire again. So after I fire this one, watch here, and we'll wait for the reload to finish of the next missile, and we'll see just how long it takes to get the thing fully reloaded and ready to fire again. So that little hatch opens up, the missile comes up on the rail, then the missile's going to slide forward on the rail, then the little hatch will close, then the fins pop out, and that's when it's finally ready to fire again. So it's a fair delay between the reloads. However, you can fire the main gun in the meantime, so it's not too bad. This will be really effective against most targets it's going to encounter. Really heavily armored tanks, you should have some trouble with them, but the missile should be fairly effective against a lot of things from head-on. The little gun is really funny, and the little rounds that it fires are actually not bad. Of course, you're going to have no trouble with light tanks or early generation World War II tanks, but apart from that, it should be alright for a lot of higher tier, later generation enemies that it's going to encounter. The thing with the missile, once you fire it while you're on the move, your tank is going to stop moving, or your infantry fighting vehicle is going to stop moving. However, as you can see with that missile I fired on the move there, it basically went straight at its aim point when I fired it. So as long as you get a good aim, and it does have a stabilizer, so it actually helps for launching missiles on the move. As long as you get a pretty good aim point before you touch off the missile, it should go pretty reliably at your target. So you will come to a stop when you fire it, but you should have a pretty good chance of hitting whatever you aimed at, assuming that it's not moving and getting out of the way of your shot or anything. But the missile moves pretty quickly, and it doesn't fly erratically off the rails like a lot of the ATGMs do, so this should be a pretty decent addition to the Soviet tank tree. There are the modifications. You don't actually get any ammo upgrades for it. And that brings us to the T-64A 1971. That is an extremely fast turret traverse and a very high velocity gun. This is going to make a lot of people really happy. That turret in a stock configuration can really move. And the APF-SDS rounds are really good as well. This, of course, is the tank that has the deflectable heat FS shields off to the side so that you can angle and still not take heat FS damage. They're not going to stop any APF-SDS or, honestly, APDS rounds, but you're probably going to be mostly safe against those anyway. That's quite the speedy turret traverse. It also accelerates pretty quickly and gets up to speed pretty well, as you can see here. That combined with a gun stabilizer and a very low-profile turret is going to make a lot of Soviet tankers pretty happy, I think, with the T-64A. Fires pretty accurately on the move while stock, although it's not a 100% guarantee. There's a little bit of bump and jostle with the stabilizer when you're at maximum speed. But it's pretty good. I really like the T-62. I think I'm going to love the T-64. This will probably be the first Soviet vehicle that I grind for in the update. But it's probably not going to be the first Soviet vehicle I'm going to get in the first update. The next update. Look at that gun depression, too. That's really good gun depression. The Soviets finally figured out the gun depression was useful. Pretty good velocity on those APF-SDS rounds. And this one has the same reload sound where it sounds like a chain or a belt of ammo or a bunch of loose bullet rounds, which I think is funny. It does only have the one coax machine gun, so not a lot of anti-air capability, but pretty good ammunition choices too. This is what I'm probably going to buy first. This is the Object 120, which is the premium for the Soviets for the 1.71 update. This thing fires 152mm heat FS rounds at very high velocity. And look at the gun on this thing. It's hilarious. I mean, I would get this thing for the meme factor alone, much less the fact that that gun is going to be extremely dangerous and it moves pretty well as well. And, as you can see, very high velocity means you can make some very accurate long-range shots at moving targets. Also, it moves pretty well. Now, I'm pretty sure this is a stock vehicle, even though it's a premium. I think it's stock for the test drive. I have no way of knowing for sure. I just know that on the M47 I didn't have access to all the ammo, and I didn't on the Object 120 either. So I don't know if this is the best possible performance you're going to get with the Object 120, or the M47 for that matter, or the T114, or if they're going to be better than this when you buy them because they'll be fully modified as premiums. I can't tell you that for sure. The nice thing about this thing not being terribly fast is it fires really accurately on the move, as you saw there, as long as you're not hitting a bunch of bumps. You can't really fire that accurately on the move with too many vehicles like this, especially something with a gun that long. But I got two pretty good shots there on the move at what's basically full speed for this thing. And watch this Panther turret. If anybody didn't notice, in the devblog video, they updated the physics a little bit too, and they've got much better ground collision detection with like exploding pieces of debris. So that's also a nice little update. I did also test out the 152mm heat or HE rounds on here, because when you've got HE rounds that big, why not? And if you look, they're very similar in velocity to the Heat FS rounds, so that's also pretty cool. They don't have quite the velocity drop from the Heat HE rounds as you do with a lot of other vehicles. Hello. Now the other thing with the Object 120 is you don't get a full traverse, but it's still pretty good. You also get APFSDS with it. That brings us to the premium flying boat, the BE-6, which is going to have quite a bit of bomb and torpedo load and very dangerous defensive armament. A lot of 23mm cannons on this thing. I think a lot of people will get this for the fact that it's a flying boat, for the fact that it's also meme-worthy, and the defensive cannons are going to be pretty good too. It essentially is going to be the BB-238 for the Soviets. This brings us to the British tanks, starting with the Daimler Armored Car Mk.II. Daimler, whatever. The turret traverse is not going to be fast at all on this thing, so be prepared for that. The gun is reasonably good, but it's solid shot, because of course it's the British. And it's alright, but you're going to have to do some surgical dissection on enemy tank crews and enemy tank components to really kill them. You won't get too many one-shot kills with this. If you get a good hit in ammo, you may do it, and I would probably give at least one round or two out of every couple into an engine and try to start a fire. Once you take out a driver, or once you take out a gunner, probably. The other thing with it is it doesn't really accelerate terribly fast, which was a little bit disappointing. It does have a coax machine gun, which is nice, and it is a pretty small target. I think it's going to be difficult to hit this thing. Although large, high-caliber HE rounds hitting anywhere near it will probably cause enough splash damage to do significant damage, and I really want to see one of these things get a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4,000, 5,000 pound bomb drop really near it, because I want to see how far it tumbles from the blast. As you can see here, though, maximum speed is not that great. So for something that is wheeled and probably isn't going to have a lot of hill climbing power, I don't know. I don't know how great this is going to be in battle. It's a small target. There is that to be said. And the gun seems to be alright, velocity-wise. It just... the stock ammo is probably not going to be great. It does get better ammo upgrades, though, so we'll see how it turns out. That brings us to the Chieftain Mk.10, with an interesting new-looking turret. The turret traverse is not anything really special to write home about. It gets the same ammo as all the rest of the Chieftains, at least stock. So you get the APDS and HESH rounds that aren't going to do a whole lot against this angle on the mouse. Although the APDS rounds for the Chieftain are pretty good and have pretty good penetration if you get the right angle. That actually made it through and damaged the track, so you could actually do some pretty decent damage to the mouse from here if you hit him in the right spots. A little higher and you get a pretty good hit on his turret there. Now here's what I was talking about. The turret is interesting and different, and the gun is a little bit different looking too in the Mk.10. I think it looks pretty good myself. Now, as far as the driving, acceleration, and top speed, not a lot of surprises here. It's a Chieftain. It doesn't get going too quickly, and it doesn't get going too fast at its top speed. The stabilizer is really good, and the gun is really good, and the stock shells are not terrible. Just APDS has some problems with some angled armor. But apart from that, if you can not be shooting at angles, the APDS stock round in the Chieftain is going to do you quite well. I'm not sure if it has the 2 machine guns like the other Chieftains, where the ranging one, I couldn't find it if it did, and it may have been that my controls were not set up right to fire it for the dev server, but it seemed like it only had the 1 coax and not the ranging one. I could be wrong. It could be there. Like I said, I didn't spend a lot of time messing around with the controls because I just wanted to make sure I got everything recorded before I ran out of time. Pretty good stock ammo. I don't remember if I said this was 105mm. It's not. It's a 120. So if I said 105mm at the beginning, that I don't think I did, but my mind thinks I did. So if I did say 105, I meant 120, and if I didn't say 105, well, then it's still a 120. Gun depression is pretty good on it, because the Brits got that right. And the turret rotation's acceptable for a stock configuration, and obviously will get better with turret modification, turret rotation upgrades, so it does get an APF SDS round, so that's very nice. That brings us to the Striker ATGM. One thing I thought, I didn't pay attention when I first started the test drive, that it does actually get 10 missiles. You get 5 in a first load here, and they're all second generation, so they're all mouse aim, which is awesome. The problem is they're swing fires, so they're not great. I was just fooling around to see how responsive they were there, and after that I just fired them all off at the target I wanted to hit on the mouse. I fired all 5 off at the mouse, and then it didn't automatically reload, and I thought there just weren't, it doesn't show your ammo total here, so I'm not sure if I had to hit a button and hit the reload button to make it reload, or if something else was supposed to happen, or if it just didn't reload, but I'm not sure how you get the missiles to reload here, so sorry about that. I didn't pay attention to how much ammo it actually carried, so after I fired off the 5th missile and then it didn't change, there was no reload animation, there was no reloading, and I'm just clicking away here and getting nothing, I thought, okay, well, it must just be 5 missiles. That kind of sucks. That doesn't give it a lot of combat endurance. However, the one thing it does have that's a big positive is look how much ammunition this roof-mounted machine gun has. Watch how long this thing takes to fire empty. That is one heck of an ammo belt. So I thought here during the test drive that there were no more missiles to get, so I didn't go too long in this one. We did a little speed test here, and a little bit of a 360 look at it to check it out. It's something you're pretty much going to want to hide behind a hill or a tank wreck or something and fire over the top of it, just like the swing fire. But yeah, it does actually come with 10 missiles, so it does have the capability to reload once. I'm just not sure what you have to do to make that happen. If it doesn't happen automatically, I would assume you have to actually press the reload button to make it reload, but I didn't try that in the game because it didn't show me how many total rounds I had, so It does move pretty quickly, and it's a relatively low vehicle, although that rotating commander hatch there with an MG mounted on top of it is probably not going to bounce a whole lot of shells. You're probably going to take a lot of damage and a lot of injuries and deaths from that. And that brings us to the de Havilland Hornet, which is one of the British aircraft for 1.71. I believe it is the only British aircraft for 1.71. Pretty sure. Looks pretty good. It looks like a advanced Mosquito, basically, with 420mm and big engines and a lot of speed. So, it should be a pretty interesting aircraft. Should be a pretty interesting ground striker as well. And that brings us to Japan's tank, which is the premium Mk.III tank destroyer prototype. And this gets interesting gun depression too by having that pop-up panel on the roof, which is how they solved the gun depression for such a long muzzle and breech, or a long breech rather, and actual gun itself, which I thought was an interesting idea. This is a 105mm gun. You don't get any ammunition upgrades for it, but the 105 that it has seems like it's going to be pretty effective. It moves relatively well, also. You're not going to do a whole lot to a T-95 from the angle that I could shoot at it here. And it doesn't, it doesn't turn very well either. Especially not if you're sitting still. There is no neutral steer on this thing, which is not surprising at all. I didn't waste too many shots on the T-95. The 105 gun here has pretty good drop on it over a pretty decent distance. It shoots pretty flat, but it is not terribly high velocity. Most of the range that you should be firing, you should actually be able to hit your target pretty reliably with this. It is going to be a pretty dangerous tank destroyer, and it is premium. I think. Pretty sure it is. I could be wrong there. The HE round, however, will not go through the side of a M4, a stock M4 Sherman, or a basic rather, not stock. The plain M4 Sherman from the side, which I kind of thought it would, but it will go through the side of a Stuart. Here's a look at it on the move. It's a relatively low-profile vehicle. It still sticks up pretty good. And the front of the casemate is basically flat, so you'll probably take a lot of heat rounds and heat FS and APCR rounds right through the front of this thing, including APDS from the Brits probably. But you should be able to return some pretty effective counterfire. It's one of the biggest guns that the Japanese have, especially one that doesn't fire just large HE rounds or large heat rounds. It fires APHE. Most of the Japanese tanks from the World War II era only go up to 75, except for this, so that's kind of an upgrade. The zoom isn't terrible, and you can kill a Super Pershing from the side of the turret, so it's not too bad. I don't know what you can do to the front of a lot of the tanks you're going to see if they're coming at you, but you should be able to at least hit the gun barrel, if nothing else, and do significant damage to it. But, yeah, it seems like it's going to be a pretty good gun. The reload isn't even that bad, and here you can see trying to turn from a standstill is not going to work very well. You need to accelerate forward, then turn. No ammo upgrades. It is premium, okay, I was right. Now we come to the Japanese aircraft, starting with the D4Y2 dive bomber. It's a dive bomber with a couple of machine guns in the nose. It does have a tail gunner. I don't really know a lot about it other than that. It gets rockets, though, as its first modification, so that's kind of neat. Next is the D4Y3, upgraded version of it, and you couldn't actually get it in a test flight because you have to have the D4Y2 first, so I just did a hangar zoom around in it. It's very similar to the D4Y2. Doesn't get the rockets, though. And finally, we have the Ki-109, which is an attacker with a cannon in the nose that looks like it's going to be pretty useful for anti-shipping and anti-tank duty. Not a lot in the defensive turret armament, though. But the cannon's got some pretty good recoil. I can pump this baby backwards. Kind of funny. I hope it can fly fast, and I hope it's maneuverable, because it's going to get swarmed by enemy fighters. The cannon's pretty funny, though. Now we'll get into tech tree screenshots, starting left to right all the nations, and we'll do tanks first, and then aircraft. So here are all the American tanks in the tech tree for 1.71. And if you're curious at all, just pause the video. You want to check out what everything looks like. Here are all the aircraft. Now, if there's a rare premium or a rare collectible aircraft or tank that I don't have, you're not going to see it on my tree here, and I can't help that. But other than that, everything else should be pretty much represented on the tech trees here. And moving on to the German tanks. Now, I think I covered all the premiums, all the new vehicles, premiums and non-premiums, that were coming in 1.71, but at least if I missed something, you can see it here in these tech trees. I think I got everything, though. Thank you to the guys on Many Miles Away's Discord server. I chatted with this back and forth, and I actually had missed the 3 Japanese aircraft at the end of the video there for the Japanese part, which they pointed out to me, so... Also, the Su-100P I would have missed. So thanks a lot to the guys on Miles' Discord that I talked about with this, who reminded me that I missed a couple. I think I got them all at this point, though. Here's all the Soviet tanks. You can also see the vehicles that got foldered here. I didn't talk about it during the American tree. Here's all the Soviet aircraft, of course. I didn't talk about it during the American tree, but the M47 and M48, M60, M46, a lot of those tanks are put in folders now, so if you're not there yet in your research, you'll have the opportunity to get to the highest tier tanks a little bit faster than those of us who researched them already, and that's fine. Here we go with the British tank tree, not a lot of ads for the Brits. So only 3 shots to get all the tanks in. And the British aircraft. Or I should say the Commonwealth aircraft, because there are some Australians there. Our Japanese tank tree. You can see I haven't actually broken into Tier 5 for Japan yet. And our Japanese aircraft. Now, for Japan's aircraft, there's one more airplane left. It's the R2Y2 Kai V3. It was the only plane that wasn't showing in that screenshot, so I didn't take a further screenshot just for that plane. And as I said earlier, the Italians didn't get anything new in this update, but here's their tech tree, just to show you that I'm not lying. And that'll do it. That is my quick look over almost an hour for 1.71 for the dev server. I hope you guys like this one. Let me know if you have any questions about anything in the comments. I'll see what I can do about getting some gameplay. No promises, but thank you guys for checking this one out. I hope this at least helped you see what they look like, and have a great day.